about how this, this unusual time, exceptional time is impacting your work and what's going on. I know we also have some student teachers on here, which is fantastic to have your voices, and we also have phys ed and health teachers. So for those people that are teachers in the schools, you're also totally welcome to stay on the call and chat with us. That'd be great. There will be a call next week, another Zoom check-in on April 8th at 12 p.m. Eastern. And that will be hosted by Laurie Sigfridson, who is the PHE Canada president. And Laurie, if you're on the call here, which I thought you were somewhere, do you want to just say hi, introduce yourself, and mention the chat next week?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Like Doug said, I'm Laurie Sigfridson, and I'm the current president of PHE Canada. It's really great to be able to pull everybody together and during this time. It's an uncertain time and definitely a disruptive time, but I think it's also been a time where we've seen incredible collaborations and people coming together for the betterment of our communities. And this is just one example of that. You know, we're faced with an issue right now around our pre-service teacher education programs and our current student teachers. And so how do we as a collective or community of practice come together and support each other through this? And so thanks to Doug and Loren, who's going to moderate the chat today. Next week, I'm going to host a chat along with Doug with our current our in-service teachers, PE and health educators, to talk about, how do we support them through this as an organization, but how do we support each other as well as our students and our families, and help everyone thrive during this time. We don't want to just survive, we want to thrive. And so how do we do that in a way that that is accessible, it's equitable, and meaningful for everyone. So thanks everyone for joining today. I'm really looking forward to the chat and hearing how things are happening, or what's happening and how things are going in your neck of the woods.
Okay, thanks, Laurie. And then next, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Dr. Loren Solz, who is, I don't know, she's slightly over to this way on my screen, but Loren, you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Seeing these numbers is pretty exciting, and while Doug was introducing me, I was scrolling through because it's so nice to see everybody's faces. So yeah, as Doug said, I'm Loren Solz. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education at University of Alberta. And I'm excited to hear everybody's experiences with their student teachers and share ours at the U of A as well.
Awesome, and we'll Lauren and I will be passing the baton and tag teaming a little bit back and forth here through the discussion. But just to state up front, this is a discussion. Lauren and I are here to facilitate and try and manage a little bit some of the comments going through. But this is not us talking about our experience. We may share a couple things as examples, but this is really about the group here and how we can have a discussion with 172 plus people, which is really cool. And the other thing is, I'll give a really quick example. I don't know, for those of you that have been or are phys ed teachers, I spent 14 years teaching in schools, and at my one school, we had a little phys ed office, and we had this kind of idea of what gets said in a phys ed office stays in the phys ed office. And we had that coined before Vegas did, but at the same time, it started to get really negative for a while. It got super negative, and so what we decided to do at that point in time is say, that's fine, it can stay here, but nobody leaves until we have a solution. So it's okay to vent, it's okay to be frustrated and upset, but we also want to be focused on a solution and how do we deal with this positively. So I kind of wanted that same feel for this discussion. This is not a bit session, for lack of a better term. Okay to vent, and it's even better and okay to focus on solutions and how we can move forward during these very uncertain and difficult times. So I hope everyone is staying well, and obviously we're practicing some physical distancing here, so that's good. We can use the Sorry. I'm also very happy that Scott Manning is on this call, and I was very privileged to teach Scott Manning in grade 8. And now he's here on the call, and it's great. And he just sent me a message to say that I was his flag football coach, and he's saying I'm still sitting here trying to think about that loss. We lost to a school and didn't get to go to nationals. So I'm glad you're still thinking about that, Scott. That's awesome. So I think what we'll do here, we'll try to do, there is on the Zoom thing, if you click on the participants at the bottom, and then you'll see the big list. If you have something to say, if you can raise your hand virtually, in that there's a little blue button that says raise your hand, and I'll keep scrolling through there and we'll try and get to people, but it is a long wait, and so, or it is a long group, but I think that's probably the simplest way. If you have other comments and resources and things that you want to share, you're also welcome to drop them in the messages to everyone. Because we can keep those afterwards. PHE Canada is recording this call, and I'm not sure if we're going to post it afterwards or not. It might not be useful that way, but at least we can track the chats on there too. So I think that's how we'll go. If there's questions as you go along, you can also, if you feel like you're getting ignored, or I'm not seeing your hand, or Loren's not seeing your hand, you can also send a chat message to us privately and say, hey, I've been waiting, and that's totally fine too. So I think without further ado, we'll get rolling, and I'm going to turn it over to, just cruising through the list to see if I see any hands up right now, but it seems like we're all good to go. So I will turn it over to Loren for our first topic discussion.
Okay, thanks, Doug. And as Doug said, we wanted to keep this fairly casual. We have some, topics set aside, but if they go, and our conversations kind of go off topic, that's okay as well. So our first topic, we just wanted to start off with discussing how your institution is handling student teachers during this time. We know that some of our student teachers were actually in placements. Some of our student teachers were just starting placements. Depending on the institution and the stream or the type of student teacher they were. So we are looking for you to share how your institution's handling student teachers during this time, and maybe what's worked well, or some struggles that you have faced. So just to share what's happening at the University of Alberta, we have two categories of students. We have IFX students, which are students that get placed within their first practicum. And that practicum's 5 weeks long. And then we have AFX students, which is their second practicum, and that practicum is 9 weeks long. So the first practicum students, the IFX students, hadn't yet started their placements. So when schools got closed, they hadn't been in their schools starting their placements yet. So for those students, what the University of Alberta did was canceled their placements and replaced it with an online project for completion. So when they complete this online project, they would get credit for their placement. And then with the AFX students, is that 9-week group, and that's their last placement, and for most of them, their last part of their degree. And they were about 2/3 done, so they were about at that 7-week mark of their 9-week placement. And they also got their placement canceled at that point. They have been granted credit, and their teachers have provided a modified assessment or an assessment based on what they've done up to that point. So for our students, the positives is that it's worked well in the sense that it hasn't held up their program. So they've been able to continue, on track for their undergraduate degree. I teach the AFX group, and as many of you with our students, you become a tight-knit group. I get them for essentially the whole year and 2 courses throughout that year for the most part. And based on my conversations with my students, it was a sad ending to their undergraduate degree for sure. They didn't get a chance to say goodbye to those students that they taught, but they were happy that their degree didn't get held up. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. We did communicate through our students through a letter. If you're wondering about how we communicated it, it was an emailed letter. And they were just told that that it was done and the next steps. So I'm interested to hearing what your institutions have been doing and some successes, what's worked and challenges.
Jay McCluster had his hand up there.
Hi, everybody. Is it good? Everyone's hearing me? Perfect. So I'm the phys ed curriculum and instruction teacher at Mesnack College when we have the Mount Royal Education Program. So we had a couple of groups in their 12-week final practicum. And I think we were at week 6, week 7, and they, similar, it sounds kind of like gave them credit, did a modified assessment. I think our students, were disappointed. I know they didn't see a solution, but they know they had just got into their 100%, full teaching, and we're a week into that. And I think they recognized that that was the biggest portion of learning, that they were really going to be able to see if they had it or if they needed some further development, and then to see the growth over those 4 or 5 weeks of 100%. So I think there was quite a disappointment through that. I know that they worked with their cooperating teachers closely to try and help kind of get prepared. And one thing I liked that our coordinator, Laura Lee, did was we put right at kind of at the start of this, we put a Google Doc together, and the students put together links, resources, and online stuff for their practicum teachers at the schools. I think it ended up, being 50 pages of slides of different resources that their teachers it was kind of like a final gift to their teachers. So I thought that was a neat little thank you from our students to their practicum teachers of a bunch of resources that they could quickly go to there. But then I think ultimately it was understanding, but disappointment knowing that their experience isn't going to be as rich as somebody else's. And then with the elimination of substitute teaching for the final 3 months, they really feel like that they're going to go into September probably a bit behind other graduates of different years, and not quite sure, I guess, maybe whether they're ready or, haven't had that full experience to speak to principals in other districts about what it is they can bring to the table. From my point of view, that was kind of I just wanted to share our, our experience here through the Mount Royal Mesnack College education. Our 3rd years for me as well, we had kind of a disappointing situation in that we had a school commit the entire month of March to come to our school and our gym for our phys ed students to teach. And we were into week 2 of teaching 35 grade 4 through 6s. And we missed out. And so we had to, obviously between the 30 students of mine, the 35 students of them, we were well over the 50 mark as far as how many people could be together. And so we had to cancel the kind of the practical experience through that curriculum course as well.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And I think I'd echo most of what you said, but in particular, the worry for students in their future jobs, in the sense of, is it going to be held against them that they have less experience than somebody that had a full practicum, and their ability to develop into that teacher that needs to be for the first year, right? So it's a big concern for our students as well.
I didn't see any other hands yet, but if someone wants to jump in, I think that's okay. We're all being very respectful here, which is lovely. Maybe some of the other...
Doug, Lynn has her hand up.
Okay, go for it, Lynn.
Thanks, Doug. We're in a similar position. We have a 11-month program. So our students just started their 8-week practicum. They were 1 week into their 8-week practicum when things shut down. So our students would complete the 8-week practicum, and then they have to come back to campus for a third term in May and June. So what we've tried to do over the last couple of weeks is, just in case schools went in, because we weren't sure a couple of weeks ago, we were scrambling to try and see if we couldn't rearrange our May-June courses and put everything online during March and April, which is now going to be April and May, so that they could at least finish their coursework. So what we've decided to do is the administration has put together an alternative schedule. We're all teaching online right now. Well, we will be. We're going to stagger it to not overwhelm the students. And the 6 or 7 courses that they still have left to do, plus their major project at the end, they'll be doing, I guess, starting this week right through till mid-June. They'll stagger their courses and they will at least get their courses. We are in the process of attempting to negotiate with the province whether or not, I think our students have about 10 weeks in right now, and I think they need about 15 or so, or anyway, they're off a couple weeks for the requirement for a teaching certificate. So the faculty's in discussions with the province at the moment to see if something can't be done. We're assuming that there's going to be an arrangement. So for us, it's our students had a short practicum. They had their 5-week practicum, but they weren't able to finish their 8-week practicum, and we're finishing their coursework off, staggering it over April, May, and June, just to see if we can at least get them the number of credits that they need.
Thanks, Lynn. I saw, if there's questions, I also saw Dan with his hand up there. Dan Robinson.
Hi, thanks Doug and Loren for organizing this. We have 4 practicums, and so all of our graduating students will have already done 16 and a half weeks before they were meant to go out this time. So though they aren't going to get the practicum experience, they still needed a 3-credit course. So it sounds like what some others have done, we've given them a different task. If anybody's at a university trying to sort out what that task could look like, we're happy to share. Basically, our students were planning for practicum. That was a third of their task. Then they were to take those lessons and units and plan for out of school learning experiences. And the third task was a reflective task. The only exception to that is we have a number of students who are from Alberta and Ontario, and the ones from Alberta have gone home, and they're working along their cooperating teachers in Alberta schools, doing the planning alongside them for the instruction from out of school. So I thought maybe some of that would have been happening in Alberta, but like I said, our students who are in Alberta are working with cooperating teachers virtually to plan and deliver content.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Lynn. Does anybody have any questions? I thought I saw a hand, so I'm sorry if I missed you.
Just a quick comment with, and I'll ask Loren. Loren is the chair of the PHE Canada Research Council right now, and Dan is actually the incoming chair, and Lynn has been on the executive and a chair as well. But is there a way that we can share is there a direct Research Council email? Or like, I'm wondering, as we get these different resources, I can see people asking Lynn, and I've been asked for ours here at U of A and different stuff, if we can maybe share those to the Research Council and create a folder. Can we do that, Loren?
Yes, we can do that. I can put the Research Council email up in the messages, and then if people want to share their resources, they can send it to that email, and we can do that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Any of our Ontario colleagues doing things differently? I see Tim, I see Carolyn. I'm trying to roll through and see who else is there. I've got a hand from Carolyn, and then we'll go Steve, and then I see Bob waving. So we'll go in that order. Carolyn Temerciglou, Steve McGinley, and Bob Thomas, in that order.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Hi, everyone. Nice to see everybody. I guess our big question that I'd like to talk about is in Ontario, our programs are 2 years. And so our second year is actually, it worked out well that they got all their 4 practicums in, and actually their 4th practicum was leading right into March break. So the only adjustments we've had to make for our graduates this year is the remaining 2 weeks of classes being online. So there's been a lot of using Zoom. We had a research celebration that obviously was not able to happen. It would have happened today, of our second years in our Masters of Teaching program, sharing some of their research. So they're doing it in different formats. My biggest question, I guess, moving forward is looking at the support with those who are going to be having to find themselves teaching health and phys ed, the teacher education courses online. We are at OISE definitely moving towards teaching our spring and our intersession courses online. And that's already been decided. And we have in the spring, the PJ elementary, a few elementary cohorts, 18-hour course in the spring, and a 12-hour JI course in the spring and the summer. So, you know, this excited for the challenge, but really trying to think about how do I, you know, just collaborating with others who are finding themselves in that same position, maybe having to prep. We will be starting that in middle of May. And some of it will be synchronous, some of it will be asynchronous. So that's a big sort of question that I have, just as far as looking for opportunities to collaborate on ideas. Thanks.
Good questions, Carolyn. You jumped right into the second topic that we're going to chat about, so that's okay. It's good. So let's put a pin in that one for a second, and we'll move to Steve McGinley and then Bob Thomas.
Thank you, Carolyn. That was actually my question as well, Doug. So but I'll just give an update perhaps from British Columbia or UBC. The secondary teacher candidates had 6 weeks under their belts, and that has been pulled, of course. Currently, their practicum is on postponement till perhaps the negotiation between the province and the 9 faculties of education here at BC come to a decision based upon how the next 4 weeks will look. Unfortunately, our elementary teacher candidates did not start practicum after spring break. So it seems that their decision would be a little different between secondary and elementary. We have now moved all our courses online for May, as well as the first term in the summer term, and potentially moving towards all fully online for summer as well. So I would be interested in collaborating with other instructors for elementary method courses, as well as any other collaborations of moving these courses online. So a small working group perhaps that we could strike as a result of this would be great.
Thanks, Steve. Go ahead, Bob.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just glad to see that we've got so many of our colleagues in health and physical education. And here in Ottawa, I'm very pleased to see that the University of Ottawa has provided a lot of really wonderful teachers that come into our schools. And I have to say, Carolyn, it is a challenge for us all here in the country. I'm happy to say that we're kind of busy on the home front here, but my wife as the Director of Education, I'm overwhelmed with all the information that everyone is exposed to along the way. But I would just simply like to say that University of Ottawa, our spring courses have been put on hold, but we're looking to going online for the summer courses. And so we have 8 courses going on in the summertime for elementary and high school on the honor specialist. So we've gone to the platform, as many people have done, and we're working our way through the Brightspace, and we're taking all the things that we have as course outlines and summaries and so on, and seeing if we can take some of the examples that we've had from previous courses, making them available to people along the way. So all the work that has been generated over time, can we go to the Google our Google Drives and see what we can do there along the way. And I like the idea of like sharing some more of those kind of things because as you mentioned at the beginning, Doug, I've got two sayings that in life, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity for solution. And there's more power in many than there is in one. And look at what we're doing here today. We've got like 100, and, you know, we've got over 100 people, and we can do these things. And so I'm so glad that we've kind of started with this. So we're on the venture. We will move ahead with these kind of things. And I'm glad that people have stepped up and we can make those contacts with future forums like this. So thank you very much.
Okay, I'm wondering, I'm going to cherry pick a little bit here, just because I know, and I was going to send you a message, but Chad Killian is a prof from the States on here who's got a specialty research focus, and I think practice as well in online learning. Chad, do you want to jump in on this at all?
Sure. Thanks for having me. It's good to meet you all. I love this community that you have going here. So I think the policy and sort of the structure is a little bit different in the United States, it sounds like. I'm not as familiar, obviously, with a lot of the provincial requirements. But one of the things that we're able to do is, since our EdTPA, or our main nationalized teacher assessment, was concluded during the first part of for our students, the first part of our student teaching experience. We have half in high school, half in elementary. We finished the nationalized assessment at the middle of the semester, and then they complete their elementary. So what we're having the students do now is a digital at-home physical education experience. And part of that, and this is where thinking outside the box as a teacher educator, I'm developing content online to help teachers, high school teachers, sort of navigate this process, but we're also infusing that into our instruction for our students. So since we don't really know much about what consistent online looks like, I'm trying to provide a model of what that could look like, and using that as sort of this meta example of, you know, here's something that it could look like. We haven't really taught you much about online, but there you go. So we're trying to build in some digital experience to get students through their field placements. And I'm not sure if that that would work up there, but speaking to sort of the transition towards online learning at the university, I think it's just important to make sure that there's an intentional socialization experience built in to help students navigate learning independently and learning online. It's hard enough for us, but we also need to remember that it's a new experience for them. So helping them be successful as much as possible and supporting them at the front end, I think could have a lot of impact for their experience.
Thank you. Anthony, did you still have your hand up?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to offer some comments. Hello, everyone. Thanks for this, and this opportunity is just wonderful. Great to see so many folks. I was late to this call, and because I was on a call with the Association of Canadian Deans of Education, and we were trying to understand what the picture looks like across the country in terms of, particularly in terms of practicum experiences. And frankly, it's a bit of a mess. That's the situation we're in. In some provinces, there's some hard legislation, fixed mindsets existing among school boards, governments that are really not allowing a lot of flexibility, and that's frankly stuffing the experience for students. And I think where we're at is that there's been a lot of creative kind of the simple piece of taking a practicum, removing it, and putting courses in place, online courses instead. We're seeing a lot of that sort of thing going on, or where teachers are, student teachers are working with, you know, associate teachers in schools to do something, develop something online. So we're seeing those kinds of responses. But the issue that I really wanted to lay on the table here, and this came up, and it's something that I hadn't thought of until this morning, is September. It looks as though this will go actually into the fall. and that there could be a second wave, a second peak in some provinces around about October time. So the response to that, I think, is very different. I mean, I know at Mount St. Vincent, where I am, we've pushed all our practicum off to the fall. We said to our first year students, you'll have more practicum in the second year, let's wait and deal with it there. But there may not be options around that. And I think some universities are looking at it saying, okay, well, let's try to do some online learning, and then later in the fall semester, we'll get them out into schools. And some are looking at it saying, okay, no, let's do small class, small workshop, seminar type work where we don't have to have many students in. Let's elongate the regular day so people can come in at different times. There's lots of thought around that, but I think this is going to be more disruptive than we think it might otherwise be. Sorry to lay the doom and gloom.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anthony. No, I mean that sincerely. Thanks a lot. I think doom and gloom is one thing, but it's important to be realistic and pragmatic about what may happen. And I think we have to be prepared. And we're not exactly getting as straight an answer as we might from some of our government officials. But I think, from what I'm hearing too, there's a lot of different. So I think it is important to prepare that. So maybe we can kind of roll into that thought. If we, like my thought for the next kind of topic was a little bit of the challenges and opportunities for FEAT during this pandemic. Will you be teaching online? Whether it's a bit of a SWOT discussion, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Chad, you mentioned a few of those things. The idea of still having social connection. I'll give an example briefly and then open it up again. I know, so Dr. Haley Morrison is on the call here too, and we had a spring curriculum pedagogy for elementary phys ed class that we're supposed to be teaching this spring, and we were asked, can you teach that online? And we actually at this time made a decision to say no, we don't want to teach it online, because the way we teach that class is 50% in a physical activity space. It could be outside, it could be a playground, it could be the gym. That's not to say that we, if as Anthony said, we have to move to the fall, it's not to say we won't do it. It's just that we didn't feel it was right to have to force it into this for spring. And so we'll look at it for later, but we may have to look at it. So, and then the other piece, and it kind of gets into another topic, but is, what are we giving away too much? If we agree to go online, will we ever be able to go back to face-to-face? Are there some people that might push that? So I think it's important to have those conversations. And the last thing I'll say before I shut up and open the floor again is I really, really liked Steve's idea of how can we put together a collective sharing piece so we're not all trying to recreate things. And we see that going on with phys ed teachers right now with the whole hashtag HP at home. But is there a way that we can really embrace this digital instruction in a good way without kind of compromising some of our values and integrity? So that was fairly vague, but I'll just open it up again from there.
I saw Nate Hall's hand, so we'll pass it over to you, Nate.
Perfect, thanks. Again, thanks for hosting this. Some really good conversation this morning. Hi, everyone from Winnipeg. It's snowing here, so I hope you're doing better where you are. Like 30 centimeters in the last 24 hours, but we're making the most of it. It was interesting what you just said, Doug, about the spring course. So we offer a course here that our BPHE students need to move forward to the after degree. So at the University of Winnipeg, there's an integrated program where students can do their education degree right from day one, but there's also an after degree option where they can apply to education after they completed a 3-year degree. And for the phys ed or kin students, they do a 3-year BPHE. And one of the courses that they need to complete before they can get into the after degree is a course in outdoor recreation and education, which I happen to teach in the spring term each year. And it was supposed to go in June, and obviously they canceled it and pushed it back to later in the summer was the original idea. But the university has now made the decision that we will offer no in-person courses until the fall term. And so they contacted me and said, can we run an outdoor education and recreation course online, basically in June? And I was put in a similar position as you and Haley, it sounds like there, and having to consider this and whether that would be good for the students. The problem is that many of these students are depending on getting this course to move forward. So that has to be taken into consideration. But for me, it's also about the quality of the education and the experience that they would receive. And for an outdoor ed course, one of the big premises of outdoor ed is experiential learning. More than half of this course takes place in the field, in person, in the past. And after some long discussions with my dean, they've decided to not move ahead with trying to force some form of online version. But it did take considerable consultation with myself and with them to try to come to that conclusion, as opposed to just saying, well, the students need it, we'll try to force something together, even though therefore pedagogically the course would probably suffer and the experience would suffer. And so we're hoping to run it in a compressed version in the first 6 weeks of the fall term, September and October. But again, from what Anthony just shared with us, I mean, that's optimistic that will even be a possibility. So just kind of to share a similar experience here in Manitoba that I've been seeing and facing the last few days.
That's awesome. Thanks, Nathan. I just want to give a shout out to Ray Agostino, who is on his treadmill at the moment, giving her. Love it. So good. If I jump in for a second, I also find it interesting that, this is just from Alberta, but so we sent all the student teachers home and said, you can't student teach anymore, but the teachers are still teaching. They're all doing it online. What a great opportunity that was missed. Now, I know it's complicated with COVID and everything else, but I think that's a missed opportunity. We don't have that chance. Clancy, I see you waving there.
Thanks, Doug and Lauren, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to take part. I'm in Buffalo, New York at Canisius College, and as Doug knows, a proud Canadian nevertheless. And I think Doug hits a great point in our situation in New York State. Chad kind of hit on it as well. We have the final semester of student teaching, and we have moved into the second placement, the second 7 weeks of student teaching. And we've asked our teacher candidates to collaborate with their mentors to offer digital instruction. So that's kind of what we're working on now. And then obviously I've heard some of my colleagues talk about being in negotiations with the province, and in our case, the state, and we've done that and received some direction about what we can do. And that's where we're moving towards right now. I think Doug made a really good point too about kind of giving the keys to the car away by going and offering this online. Does it train the future Darth Vaders of the world, and does it change our perspective of physical education, or does it give the keys to the car away to potentially change the way physical education looks? I have this conversation a lot with my students and my candidates, and one thing I've been talking to them about recently over the last couple of weeks, given the circumstances, is telling children to run up and down the stairs 10 times is fantastic, but that's not physical education, that's physical activity. We need to offer an educational element that comes with that. So I think we're safe in that regard, but at the same time, under the current conditions, when you see in this fabulous get together with 150 people or plus, that's kind of the way online is looked at right now. It's offered to save money. And when we think about offering online from a context of being able to beam out the professor or the teacher to as many people as we can in order to save costs, the quality will go down. And that's where I feel comfortable in knowing that sometimes we have to consider that. And that's not to say that online can't work either. It's just that online has to be done with quality. And in order for it to be done with quality, you can't offer it to 150 people at once. It has to be with the same regard that we take when we offer classes to 10 and 12 students. When the teacher ratio is below 15:1, the students learn more. The same thing will take place online.
Bob, do you want to go? Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to what Clancy just mentioned here along the way. So if we don't have student teachers in our schools, we still have some of our teachers, and there's a bit of an expectation in the province here that we do something with some of our students, whether it's in elementary, intermediate, or high school along the way. So we have posted some things for students to do in the area of physical education and physical activity. But the problem is, or the concern is, if we have certain things that we like the students to try, and they try at home with their parents there, and something happens that they strip and fall, what kind of onus is going back to the teacher in terms of implications of filling out an injury report and that whole liability along the way? So that's where we are in the province now, as to how do we sort out some of the things that teachers are sending to homes, because all of our documents that we have from CIRA, from OFIA, and other provincial organizations, they always talk about a safe environment. But the thing is, when things are sort of suggested at home, and maybe mom and dad are not there, and something happens, what happens to the teacher that has sent that information to him or her? And so that's what we're trying to sort out now as a board and our Ontario OSPE organization. So I'm not sure if other people have experienced that, but I'm thinking, yeah, we're trying to keep the integrity of physical education. Physical activity and physical education are two different things, as we all know. But those are the challenges we're having to try to sort out, and we are in the throes of trying to do that for our students and for our teachers.
Yeah, thank you, Bob, for that comment too. Important questions and differentiations. Tim Fletcher, I see your hand was up there.
Yeah, thanks, Doug and Loren for hosting. Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Wish it was better circumstances and in person rather than virtual. There's been some very good points made. I think the threats to our subject area probably stand out the most to me. I think there are two ways that we can push back justifiably. If we think about physical education being learning about movement is one way to look at it, but it's also learning in movement and learning through movement, right? Peter Arnold's framing of that. And if we move to the online environment only, those latter two, I think, are at greater risk of being lost. So I think we could use that argument quite effectively. For pre-service teachers, I think there's also a way that we could say, in order to learn about teaching, they need to also learn about learning and learn what it feels like to be a learner in these using these methods that we're trying to advocate for them. And if they don't have the chance to experience what cooperative learning looks like or feels like, what sport education or teaching games looks like, feels like for them as learners as well as teachers, they're going to get a very, very different experience, and their teaching effectiveness is going to be affected in one way or another. So I think we can put or use fairly convincing arguments to our benefit in order to push back about that. And I'd just say well done to those people who have sort of stood their ground to say it's not really feasible. With that said, I think there is some content that works quite well in an online environment. We can engage students in being pre-service teachers and being reflective practitioners very well using online formats. So some willingness to be open to possibilities where it makes sense works, but we have to be able to pick and choose what works best in what type of environment, face to face or online, and do that really thoughtfully, because I agree there's a risk of just, well, here's a new technology, let's go at it full steam. So thanks.
Thanks, Tim. And I just want to follow up with some thoughts around health ed, because we are, talking about physical education and health education. I think one of those feasibility points is through health ed. I think for Alberta, we've missed the mark on an opportunity to teach students health literacy, how to find adequate information, et cetera, through a pandemic. And I think that's where, if we still need to focus on the physical, don't get me wrong, but I think, if we're concerned about some of that feasibility stuff, one of the things we can focus on is the health outcomes within our curriculums.
I'm gonna pick on someone again. Just I didn't see any hands there on a quick scan. Oh, I did see Chad's. Just before I go to Chad, Maura Coulter is on here from Ireland, and I know she's been engaged in the experience of trying to teach outdoor and adventure activities online. So Maura, I wondered if you felt comfortable to jump in as I put you on the spot.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, it's been a challenge. I'm listening in, very interested to hear what's going on in Canada. It's the exact same in Ireland. It's no different, really. We're having the same struggles as you guys with school placements. This is a heavy time we would have about 1,000 students out on school placement at the moment in elementary teacher ed, and it's just been completely cancelled and pushed into next semester in the fall. But I'm a bit anxious when Anthony says that may not be a possibility if we experience the same things that are anticipated in Canada here in Ireland. Yeah, my outdoor ed, I was just saying to Doug there that I had planned a lot because of the weather in Ireland and also the clocks going back and things, the time change. I planned a lot of outdoor work for the next couple of weeks. But unfortunately, it's very, very difficult then to transfer outdoor work to online. But it was a case I didn't have Nathan's consultations and conversations was very much you must do. The students must get accredited for this module. They need to get their assessments and get their modules up to date. So it's just saying there are a lot of tasks being set for them to do, but we are isolated at the minute, a 2-kilometer radius around our homes. So for some of them, the tasks might be a bit difficult to complete. So it's trying to balance that, the requirements, but understanding that the students may not even meet the requirements depending where they are, whether they can get out, whether they have a garden, a backyard, places to do things. So trying our best, but being very cognizant that students may or may not be able to do what we ask them to do. We're also very cognizant as well of students looking after sick family members, parents on the front line. Some of our students' part-time work involves them being on the front line. So I think even though we're trying our best to teach and to do our best to carry on with our work, I think we just have to be cognizant as well of where we are within our family lives, but also where our students are and what they're experiencing and things like that. So a lot of other things that generally you don't think about happening that you have to think about.
Thanks, Maura. I appreciate that. I think it's good to, as Tim mentioned too, we have to take a realistic look at what are the things we can do and do well, and what are the things that we should not be doing, and what's the rationale for that. And it would be interesting, I think, to consider, as Anthony said, as we may be moving down this road, maybe we can put together a collective position statement. That's I think a good role for PHE Canada here in Canada. What does this mean if we need to go to online, both in the FEAT world, but also in obviously the HPE world as well. So maybe we can be thinking about that too. Chad, I know you were waving there.
Thanks. I don't know if this deviates from what the direction is, but my thought is, what is, looking forward, what is the baseline level of sort of remote digital pedagogy that we want our majors to have when they graduate? Or is this just sort of a stopgap thing? So looking to the future, thinking the possibility of localized sort of closures, is it reasonable for us as PETE professors to develop an expectation for our students to be able to teach remotely and teach effectively?
I enjoy these awkward silences. They're super awesome. They're really good. Bob, I see a wave there.
I think the statement that was just brought forth to us, I think we're all quiet because we're always thinking about how important it was to us as human beings and what we teach and what we do. So that is the question right now, that physical activity and physical education. I mean, we don't want bowling online. We want to be able to do those kind of things. So that's our challenge. And I agree with you. Like, we're all quiet, and it is a challenge for the future because we're talking about the personal well-being of ourselves and our students and our teachers along the way. So it's a really good question. I don't have an answer, but I'm glad it was brought up.
So here's a quick question that wasn't on my topic list at all. So we have these student teachers who are, well, and to preface that, at the very end of the call, we want to talk about, is it valuable to do this again? And if so, do we need a focus topic? When Loren and I were chatting before this meeting, we talked about how it might be really important to put this out to our student teachers and have a collective discussion with our student teachers who are not student teaching. But so I'll just throw it out there. It seems like we all have students who are not teaching right now. They're also extremely uncertain about the world ahead and what things are going to hold. They were already in Alberta anyways. They were already uncertain about that before COVID. And now it's like the shit has really hit the fan. So how can we as a collective effort, how can we support the health and well-being of our student teachers during this really uncertain, unclear time? Jay, I see your hand up there.
There we go. As you talked, I lost a little bit. I was focused on what you said, and I lost a little bit about what you were saying. But I think if I remember, and I jump on what Bob was saying, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, what I enjoy as part of our Mount Royal program is that I get to go out in practicum, and I get to see my practicum students. And I've always been amazed at the number of physical activities they do in the gym that we did in the gym together. And I come back and I kept asking myself, why is that? Why are they being lazy? Why aren't they, trying something else? And when you talk to the students, they said, because I did it, I was most comfortable with it, because I experienced it, I could bring it to my students. And I think, to jump on that question about the online learning, I would see it as such a deficit for those student teachers, because in my experience anyways, the more things they experience physically and go through as a student that we bring to them, they seem to be more confident in bringing it to their students. Their students seem to enjoy those lessons, and it serves as a point of confidence for them in their practicum. So I see that as like you said, an opportunity loss there if this online learning continues. I just don't know how we create those visceral experiences for people to gain the confidence to step into those situations and then lead them, because they haven't been through them really in those environments. So I mean, that would just be an observation from what I've seen out on practicum. My colleagues give me gears about rubber chickens they see on practicum and things, but again, things that we do and work with in our kind of laboratories in our gyms, seem to be what radiates outwards towards the students that we teach.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I appreciate that. And I know in the work that we do in our program, that experience is foundational, and especially like Haley and I work with elementary generalists, and some of these people have had horrific experiences of physical education, and we want positive experiences in the gym or on the playground or wherever we are. So that's super important. I saw Carolyn's hand wave there. Carolyn? And Bob, I see you.
There we go. I just posted an article that a colleague of mine at OISE just shared earlier this week. Just as a reminder to us all when we think about ourselves as teacher educators, but also those who are teaching in schools right now, elementary and secondary, this whole transition to online teaching has really been an emergency response to remote teaching, and during a global pandemic. And it's very different, sort of this, what does that effective online learning look like versus this emergency response. And the article really highlights a few things that we as educators can do for our students. And it makes me think about what I've been able to try to support over the last couple of weeks for my teacher candidates is, first of all, there's that sense of security. It really sort of connects to that social emotional learning, sort of looking after our physical and psychological needs first, then really sort of providing that opportunity of sense of connectedness. And so I think about, it is giving me some foundation moving forward as I think about, we are having to deliver an online course in the spring. And a big emphasis will be this piece about really allowing my teacher candidates, particularly those who are coming from elementary perspectives, who, as earlier stated, many of them are have had really negative associations with physical activity. It really is going to be an opportunity to create more time for reflection, the ability to sort of, maybe share some understanding and content, but also, it's trying to not have this gap as well in our continuing education moving forward. So it's trying to find that balance. And I think it was that security, sense of connectedness, and the sense of hope that I got out of the article. And there was one other, just to finish off, Amanda Stanek, our good colleague down south, she shared a great infographic. I'll see if I can share it here. It was on Instagram, but I think she found it on Twitter. And it's an infographic about COVID's hierarchy of needs, school needs. And it has a connection to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And during school, content is important, but most important is that teaching of social emotional learning. And we in Ontario, our recent elementary curriculum has social emotional learning now embedded in our health and phys ed curriculum. So there's a real explicit expectation to see this as a space to help our students think about all those aspects around social emotional learning. So I think that will be obviously a big drive and focus, perhaps. I'm still trying to reimagine, how to create these opportunities around TGFU. And I wish I really had videotaped myself teaching, in the past, but haven't done that. So I shared that article with you, and I really do find it gives some good inspiration as far as I think less is going to be more, but we don't want to lose the integrity either.
Hello. Okay, Doug, to comment?
Go ahead, Bob.
Carolyn, thank you very much for that article that you're speaking of. I have to say that in Ontario, we have the social emotional learning skills that are there. So we took that and we embedded it in with the Teaching Games for Understanding model. So we have a wheel and a rubric that kind of goes along with that. And so we've shared that with many people along the way. And so I'm just going to move to the other comment that Doug invited us to. We've got this meeting today from Physical Health Education Canada. Each one of our provinces has a physical education group of people. In Ontario, we have OFIA. And I'm just wondering, we have 72 school boards in the province of Ontario here. And maybe we as a FIA, we need to kind of get on board and see who the contact person is from each one of our districts and our school boards and see what they think about what we're doing. So we move from this national level to the provincial levels and see what our teachers and the different coordinators and consultants have to say about these same topics here, because all of those students that you have coming from faculties of education come to these school boards or districts along the way. So I'm wondering, Doug, would that be a kind of another opportunity for us to kind of get together and say, what do the different federations and the different provinces and territories have to say about health and physical education? That's what I'm looking at. Is that something to consider?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes sense to look at that at the provincial level, especially in Canada, because education and health are provincial responsibilities. And so there's always that balance between being in a federation of how do we balance the federal interests with provincial interests, and a pandemic like this is a clear example of how that works. So I think, to have further discussions and look at how do we kind of get this into the grassroots, how do we support our pre-service teachers in different ways, and how do we, I think, how do we use this as an opportunity to share the value of health and physical education. And I know for those of you that are not as familiar with PHE Canada, there's also a council of provinces and territories where the leaders from each provincial organization have an opportunity to get together and share. So that's a great mechanism to use as a starting point. So we can go from there for sure. Yeah, maybe if there's, and I know it's totally fine for people to just chill on the call and not contribute at all, but if you maybe haven't had a chance to say anything and you want to jump in on any of these topics, Loren and I have thrown our facilitation agenda out the window, which we knew. If it's hard to teach teachers, it's even harder to teach the people that teach the teachers, something like that. So we'll open it up here. I think Carl, the new president of FIPEC Quebec, would like to say a few words.
Yeah, hi everybody. I just listened to all of you, and really great to hear what's going on in the rest of Canada. Here in Quebec, we make some YouTube video to assess to the population on how to distinguish moving, how to do physical activity and physical education. So we're gonna do some video, maybe 1 or twice a week, to for the population, for them to understand the difference that what we teach is not what the student do at home. It's completely different. On the base of mental health education, I think it's the best moment for us, for matters that now we have like the most important things to teach. It's not English, it's not French that help people pass through the crisis. It's their mental health, and we can help them a lot with that. So I think that I think that's the major point where we can focus on this.
Thank you, Carl. And I just wanted to re-emphasize is everyone's, trying to get something positive out of this, and that's a great way to do it. And I think based on some of the comments said, but also the comments on the side, that we can take some of the positives and make sure we hang on to those. For me, one of the ones that Carolyn mentioned was that social emotional learning within phys ed and the mental health that was just mentioned. So I think we can hang on to those things and make sure that moving forward, that's a positive that we get out of this unique situation that we're in. So thanks for sharing some of those little bits of positive aspects. I'm also impressed with no children coming in our rooms. What's going on? It's been an hour and 7 minutes and my kids haven't come in here.
Oh, Jay's dog is in.
Oh, oh.
My daughter's cat was scratching at the door to try and get in, but I didn't let her in. So,
Would that be considered a CAT scan?
Go ahead, Shelley.
Hi, thanks. You probably don't know who I am. I'm Shelley, and I teach PJ Health and Phys Ed at Queen's Faculty of Ed. And I've been listening, and I've been going to jump in a few times, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of my context today. Like the other folks who are in Ontario, we were mostly through our second year. With my second year students, I was actually in Kenya, and I've just driven the last two of them from our Airbnb that Lara Patterson so generously donated to us. Many of you know Lara, because we were on an alternative practicum in Kenya and got called back. So they all left. I've been in quarantine with them for 2 weeks. So I've had kind of a unique opportunity staying with 4 of my students to pick their brains and to just watch and see how they're processing, number one, having that really incredible opportunity cut short. And we've worked through that, but also seeing, as you know, they have 9 different profs, someone from science, someone from social studies, someone from phys ed, contacting them and saying, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. And I guess the biggest thing I've gotten out of the last couple of weeks, it kind of ties into what's been talked about most recently, is that number one, we need to go back to, okay, what do they need? What do they need, as no matter what, our programs are all a little different, but I know my kids, I call them, even though they're adults, they have 4 weeks. Some of them have 8 hours left of an 18-hour PJ Phys Ed course to do with me, and it can't just be online. In Ontario, in order to get OCT accreditation, it has to have a synchronous component. Some of them are really stressed because they don't have, we've all probably talked about this individually in our own organizations, but they don't have enough internet access. They don't have the bandwidth they need. Some of our instructors don't as well. So that's stressful for them. I think the number one thing I did, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I sent out an email and said, this is what we were supposed to do. Here are 7 ideas I have. And if you have any other ideas how we can meet these final learning outcomes that we need for you to get the OCT to say, yes, your program is finished, then send it to me. So I don't know, I love hearing what other people are doing. I like that people are going to collaborate, but I just think we all need to keep remembering, and I haven't heard anyone say this. I'm a little stressed about next week personally, because I can Zoom chat, I use it all the time, but to run 40 students in different rooms and try to make it really engaging and really relevant, I'm nervous about it. So I know they're nervous about having to sit in class online many, many hours a day. So we're working through that. We'll figure it out, but thanks for listening. I just wanted to kind of give my perspective.
thanks, Shelley. Appreciate you jumping in and sharing that too. It's yeah, I think that it's a really complex time, right? Like we have student needs, we have faculty members needs, we have sessional instructor needs who are also have no clue what's going to happen, right? And we often forget about some of those people as well. I know, one of the things that we're trying to figure out is we're in the throes of finishing off a master's cohort in health and phys ed, and it's a blended cohort. And there's a couple students in this chat that are finishing up in that cohort as well. But we're starting a new one this summer. But and what was really key and core to the first cohort was 2 weeks spent together face to face in the summer, and that set the tone for the online part. we may not be able to do that this summer. In fact, chances are we're going to be online. And so how do we connect legitimately? How do we deal with the fatigue of staring at a screen? You know, we all need to get active like Ray is doing on there. But you know, there's a lot of questions, and I think right now more questions than answers. So these, you know, this type of check-in is really good. I do want to maybe start to move us a little bit towards a conclusion, so we're not sitting looking at screens too much. But so I guess just any last thoughts, and then I'll turn it over to Loren for the final wrap up here. But just any last hands up or burning desire to chat?
Hi, this is Ann Facey in Ontario. I'm sorry I was late to the chat, but I teach at Laurier here in Ontario, and we're really lucky at the faculty here because most of our students had enough days to graduate because we are on a slightly different model. But I don't want to go on too much about you know, how we're all having to pivot and get on to this technological education. I also just finished up my master's too, which was more face-to-face, and I found it really hard. Our last 2 classes were online, and I really felt it. We all wanted to be in the same room. So we're done, and our graduation is postponed, and yeah, lots of disappointments, but it is a really challenging time. And that's why I'd like to say, I think the most important thing is building a psychological structure for our students at home while they're physically distancing, but trying to stay socially connected. And I think phys ed is well positioned to do that in our curriculum. And I would really hope that the silver lining of this is that our school boards start to recognize how important our subject area is, because after finishing my master's, and many of you, I've read your scholarly work that are on this chat, is that our subject area is marginalized and misunderstood. So I'm thinking the silver lining in this is to really push with our school boards. I'm not in the trenches with those of you who are teachers, but how important our subject area is. And we have the tools in our curriculum to help our students. So with that, I'll just leave it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Anne. Haley, I see you've got your hand up there.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug and Loren, for hosting this here in PHE Canada. I just wanted to say from Shelley's comment there, and even Anne, it reminds me more how much we need to be seeking our student voices in this matter as well. I know that there were some pre-service teachers on this call, and that all of us have been connected to them as well, but making sure that their voices are heard in this, and what they want and can see as part of their programs and moving forward, so that we can support them in meaningful and authentic ways. One mode is not going to work for everyone. We know that, and that's not inclusive. Going online here is not inclusive to the access that some of our students have or don't have. We have to keep that in mind, but we know how to teach to diversity and are working towards that. So use your students' voices, ask them, seek out that information before making those decisions, because that's the time that we're in. So that's really, for me, finishing off this winter term, that's key. They didn't want all synchronous to be on at the same time because they were trying to figure it out. Half of my students have kids at home, so I know that the situation. So I decided on an asynchronous model, but I have opportunities that I am online for them to chat, and there are some components of that. So thinking through not only our subject area, but seeking out what our students' lives are and what they're going through to support how we're actually teaching them moving forward.
Thanks, Haley. Any other final thoughts? Okay. Nate, where'd your daughter go?
She just couldn't help herself. She had to see what was going on. I just wanted to kind of re-emphasize something that Doug said earlier in the chat today. And again, I think it's been a really good conversation. And that is that, you know, there might be some value in as a group, as a collective, coming together with some kind of statement with regards to our position on things. And I really liked the conversation about, you know, we still have to stay true to who we are and pedagogically what we want to deliver within our programs. And I think that that's really important in these times, and things are changing. That it is, you know, we are going to be asked to do things differently, and that's okay. But I think at the same time, it's important that we, you know, remember exactly what our programs are supposed to be and what we're supposed to deliver. So I don't know how maybe we do that, Doug, but I think that there's definitely value there in having a collective voice or a statement that explains that, you know, it is changing times and tough times, but it's important that we still stay true to effective physical education, PEAT programs and pedagogy at this time.
Thank you, Nate, and I would agree with that, especially if we're moving into that September time block where we're still in the same situation. I think moving forward on the same page would definitely be beneficial. I did see Bob's hand, but he's also on the phone right now. If somebody else had their hand up and I missed them.
Carolyn's got her hand up right now.
So sorry guys, that was me on behalf of Carolyn, just jumping in. To Nathan's point, I think also all the things that I see on Twitter or Instagram or the various social media, it'd be nice if we could remind our teachers on the ground. I've done it like through DMing some of them, but even if we could attach one learning goal to the activities that they're putting on there, just to show that there's a curriculum behind sort of the madness that they're, like some of the things that they're posting, it would be really nice. And then, you know, maybe an inquiry question to the kids too, just so parents understand that it's not just about the P, like the physical, there's an educational component too. So I just haven't seen a lot of that yet.
And I know Chris Fenmack just left the call, and there was a few other EverActive people on here, but they are trying to compile for Alberta at least some of those resources to kind of share out that are connected to those outcomes. So when we get that going, we can share that to the group as well. But great point, Ted.
Bob, you were waving earlier. Do you want to jump in?
I just want to thank you very much for pulling this together, because I think it's very, very important for us to have this kind of a forum. And I hope that we can continue doing these kind of things. And I want to thank all of our colleagues out there that have shared today and listened and talked to us, that we can move ahead. I always feel like the only way to go is ahead, because the past is the past and we're going to provide the future. But right now we're doing all the things that we have to do. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. And just before, I know we're gradually seeing some attrition here going through, but before everyone leaves, is it valuable to meet together again as a FEAT kind of group? And if so, do we want some kind of topic focuses? I think what I'll do, we don't have to have that discussion here, but I'll just throw my email on the chat, and if just, or maybe just on the participant list there. So if you would like to do this chat again, can you click the yes button, the little check, just so we get a sense of, as everyone looks for the yes buttons. I'm seeing a couple. Or just nod your head a little bit is good too. See some nods. Okay, so I'm seeing yes. So I'll put my email up there. If there's a specific topic, we'll go back through this chat and look for things too. But even if we don't have a specific topic, I think it's okay to just come together and be a little bit organic and emergent, and that'd be okay too. is this a good kind of, our Fridays from kind of mid morning to afternoon across the country, and is it a decent time to do that? I'm seeing a few nods. Feel free to use the yeses or in the participants toolbar. Okay, I'm seeing some. So we'll take a look at that. So just a reminder that the same type of discussion for health and physical educators, for the teachers, hosted by Laurie Sigfridson, who is the current PHE Canada president, with a little bit of support from me coming in there. And of course, you're all welcome to be in on that call. But if you have in your teacher networks, if you want to connect people, that's April 8th. It'll be at noon Eastern Daylight Time. There was a link here in the chat to go out, but we'll be tweeting it out and putting it out there too. And I just wanted to, she didn't ask me to do this, but I just thought I would do this. Melanie, as the Executive Director, CEO of PHE Canada, would you like to offer any comment, thoughts?
Got put on the spot there. No, I just, I'm so appreciative that everybody made the time for this call. There were a couple of moments where I was really moved by what was said. And so it is great to be able to send out a notice like this on Twitter, and then 2 days later to see almost 200 people on a call together. You know, I'm always amazed at the PHE community, and once again, this Zoom call shows just how passionate everyone is and how dedicated everyone is. And we often work in our little offices and disconnected, but it's always great joy to see everybody and to hear what everybody has to say, and just the similarity between keeping the integrity of PHE. The field has really come clear, and I really appreciate that as well. The comments around kind of the compassion that we need during this time, and the cooperation that we need. So the group chat feed is like 120 messages at this point. So it's just fantastic to be a part of these conversations. So thanks, Doug and Lauren, for stepping up to do this. It's uncharted territory for sure. So kudos to you guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Melanie, for helping us organize this and getting it out there to our members for sure. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, no, I just was going to thank Loren as co-host, and for PHE Canada for putting this on and hosting the Zoom and doing all that stuff. This has been really cool. I wasn't, to be completely honest, Loren and I weren't 100% sure how this would go. And it was great to have a big group of people right off the bat, and it was nice to kind of clarify out that a little bit. So thanks to everyone for being involved, whether you just spoke up or whether you listened and nodded and went through. So we will do this again for the FEAT community. We'll probably stick with a Friday, not next week, but perhaps the week after. So we'll send that out. Don't forget about Steve's PHE curriculum Google Sheet that he's got going on there. And the link was sent out for the RSVP link is sent out a few times for the chat next week, Wednesday, around teachers. And we'll clarify a little bit what that will be on. But Lauren, anything to add?
Just that we have been compiling these links that you've been placing in the comments into a Google Drive. So we'll share that with you as well, so that everybody has those links that were shared. And moving forward to one of our ideas that had been mentioned was to talk to student teachers. So it sounds like that was a good idea, or that everybody was in support of that. So perhaps we'll find a date and get that out to you as well.
Okay, stay well, everyone. Physical distancing, socialization from a distance. Wash your hands. Bye, everybody. Is that how you do the heart thing? I can't do it. How does it go? Well, there it is.